Now, for our next speaker, Dr. Jan Digutsch, very interesting. Jan, are you already in the chat?
I am.
Amazing. Hello, Jan. Thank you very much for joining us. We're talking about education. We're talking about universities. I don't know how many of our guests and listeners have been in contact with psychology students, but if you have, at some point, you will have filled out certain forms, personality assessment forms or otherwise. And so this kind of experience that many of us have shared that can sometimes be quite painful makes me very excited about Jan's project and the amazing solution that he's presented for using AI in terms of psychological research and personality assessment. Jan, thank you very much. You have the floor.
Let me share my screen, and then we're good to go. Hopefully. Perfect. Well, that was a perfect introduction. Thank you very much, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to share my university's opinion on how we can leverage AI and big data in general to better understand human experience and behavior. With a psychology background, we usually call human experience and behavior their personality. This is something that most of you will be familiar with, I guess. And to understand how we tackle that, or how we used to tackle that, let's start with a very simple example. So how does this person, does he feel comfortable around people? Like yes or no? How would you tackle that? And usually psychologists have two main ways to answer that question. The first straightforward one would be to ask the person. That's what he was referring to, with surveys, questionnaires, something like, I feel comfortable around people in general. And then you would answer from does apply, does not apply, from 1 to 5, 1 to 10, in whatever format. That would be the straightforward option, and that most of you will probably have seen at some point in your life. Or the other one would be observe, especially in experiments, in when people are in a lab, they just observe behavior. Usually the left one, asking people about their experiences and behavior, is the one that people use most. And there's a very simple and straightforward solution to that. Observing is very, very expensive and very infeasible in practical applications. So if I would want to observe this person's usual behavior, I would have to observe him for not just an hour, but for multiple weeks or even a year. It would be best if there would be multiple observers, not just one person, because then we just have the observation of one subjective experience in comparison to a somewhat objective observation. And especially the objectivity is quite important in the observations, or one of the main advantages. So that's kind of why no one used that before. But there's the solution. And that's kind of my talk right now, because when we look at that picture, we see something in their hands, which nearly all of them uses. And smartphones are in the same room with us 90% of the time. We wear them everywhere. We use them for a lot of stuff. So in theory, they should cover, or at least observe, our experiences and behavior in most of our daily lives. So this is kind of somewhat interesting to us to see, is there something within those smartphones that we can use to measure someone's personality? And we use that all the time, and we use it a lot in terms of what kind of data we produce. Estimations in a few years, the average human produces about 70 gigabytes of digital records per day. So if we scale that up, this is quite a lot of data, and this is proper big data, as in the title of this conference. But the question is, what can we actually observe? What can we use from those smartphones? What is it that kind of indicates a person's personality? And what we use in our studies is usually 6 main feature sets that we can extract from smartphone behavior. The first one being social behavior, for example, the number of ongoing or incoming calls per day, just one simple feature. Media consumption in general, what movies do you watch? What is your Netflix history? What type of music do you like to listen to? Is it acoustic? Is it rap? Is it without any lyrics? What is it that you can consume? What type of apps do you use? Do you just use your phone for kind of working related stuff? Do you also like to play games on your phone? Whatever type of apps you're using. mobility. How do you move? Like, do you not just if you go for a run, if you jog around, but also like what are your favorite spots? I think some of the smartphones already know where you're living because where you live because they kind of track your pattern, your overall phone activity. How often do you unlock your phone, for example? How often do you look at your phones? How many notifications do you get? This kind of stuff. And your day-night activity, like do you scroll on social media until 1 a.m. and have to get up at 6 a.m. or do you stop using your phone at a certain time? All of those questions, like millions of potential features that you can exclude from that. And to be a bit more specific, let's start with the most simple type of data that we can like use from our smartphone or from our from those categories in general. And this is Facebook data, Facebook likes to be more specific. And this is a study which kind of started this movement in 2013, so almost 10 years ago. The idea was Facebook likes are just zeros and ones. You either like or you don't. So not very complex data. And here in this case, guess the introverted person who prefers to stay at home, reads a book instead of the one who likes to jump on every party. So person A liked Serenity, Stargate, and computers. Serenity and Stargate are like movies and series. And person B likes Entourage, another movie, I think, Swayze, an American rapper, and meeting new people. Well, in this very simplistic and an obvious case, person A would be the introverted person, whereas person B would be the more extroverted person. It's important to say that we can't just like look if someone likes computer or not and then indicate, oh yeah, he's introverted or extroverted. It's not that simple. The thing is that we have to look at all those little information because one like has almost no information in it, but the combination of those, of hundreds, millions, thousands of those almost insignificant data points is what actually is what's interesting to us. And if we compare the performance to what we used to do, like if we match our self-report, if we gave a person, if I fill out a self-report survey now, like regarding some statements of my personality, and if I compare my self-description to the one that a work colleague how a work colleague would describe me, how a friend would describe me, how a family member or even a spouse would describe me, then we see something like that seems very plausible. Like your spouse is most similar to your self-description, whereas the least familiar it gets, like a work colleague, has the least match with your self-report. So now the question is, how do Facebook likes, very simple input data, zeros and ones, how do they match with your self-report? Is it better than your family member, better than your mother, better than your friend? It turns out it is very accurate. Using just Facebook likes, and I have to say you need at least 300 Facebook likes in order that the algorithm has them input data. It is almost like it doesn't really get better in terms of what humans can do. Like on average, it is better than humans, and that just like very simplistic data. So the next idea was, all right, that seems great. That seems interesting. Let's scale that up. Let's use the whole information that we can get from our smartphone data. And this is called smartphone sensing because we use kind of all the sensors and log data that we can use and that we can access in a privacy friendly manner, obviously. And this is a study, a very big study that my colleague, Professor Clemens Stachel did at our institute, like to see, can we predict someone's personality from smartphone data? And here are some very simple examples. Again, this is not like you don't interpret them as isolated effects, but like this is over the pattern of millions of small little data. We see, for example, listening to acoustic music is associated with being attentive to being open to feelings, or on the other hand, turning on one smartphone at the same time in the morning is associated with being ambitious. So one, again, it doesn't mean that if you turn on your phone at the same time every day, you are ambitious, but like the model prediction increases if you do that. So very like subtle patterns that we can extract to predict a person's personality in this case. And if we look at the performance, we don't really have a as nice comparison as before. We're working on that currently, but if we see like how the average correlation, like the prediction of personality is, we are around 0.2 to 0.4, which is like on average 0.34. This is like the mean that we can get over all personality dimensions that we measured. And to give that a bit of context, because that doesn't really tell anything, or doesn't seem that high. If we look at the average effect size in psychology that is reported, this is 0.2. And if we look at the tendency of people in a bad mood, they are more aggressive than people in a good mood, which seems very, very obvious to us. This only has a correlation of 0.4. So we see like this is the effects doesn't seem strong on an absolute scale, but relative to what we used to indicate in psychology, this is quite high. And as a outlook on what we're doing right now is to say, all right, if we don't rely on a personality model that smart people came up like years ago, hundreds of years ago, let's just assume that our personality is stored within the smartphones and compare the prediction of, for example, motivation and well-being, something that every one of us wants to improve, how that can be predicted from surveys and also smartphone or personal computer behavior. And especially look into the model and see what exact behaviors predicted motivation and well-being. So not just to predict it for the sake of it, but also to know why people are more motivated and experience higher well-being. And this is how we use big data and AI to improve or to learn more about a person's personality, i.e., experiences and behaviors. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Ian, for sharing an incredibly exciting project, amazing use of artificial intelligence, and based on a pretty straightforward principle. Thank you very much for sharing this. Anybody have questions for Jan? All right, I do have one question, and it's something that we talked about before the event, talking about your subject. Where do you see the dangers of the solution? Where do you see potential for abuse?
It has been abused somewhat. So the study published in 2013, the Facebook study, a company called Cambridge Analytica claimed that they used this model to kind of motivate or to measure someone's personality and then use it for the Trump election, for the Brexit election. It wasn't really that case in our view, but at least people claimed that, and it is possible to do that. You can use measure someone's personality from traces. Maybe they're not even aware of that you do that, and you can increase your sales. You can persuade people maybe. So we're not doing that to say like you can make money out of that and you should do that. We're only doing that to say like we're going to inform you what we're doing and why we're doing that. And we think that if you make sure, or first of all, if you want to warn for the negative consequences that this could have, you kind of first have to prove that it's possible to do that. And especially large companies with a lot of money, they can do a lot of stuff if they want to and if they have bad intentions. So if we say, all right, this is what you can do, and then kind of hand it to the people being in charge of our laws and say, you have to prevent this to happen if people don't want this to happen. So we're not complaining if Spotify does that to improve our music taste or to make some nice suggestions and to make some to improve our experience there. We're not complaining, or most of us not complaining about that, but we probably don't want that to influence our decision making when it comes to politics, for example. That's kind of our stance.
Of course. Of course, and it's not something you're actively encouraging or enabling. Well, thank you very much for sharing. Incredible project. I really look forward to see where it's going. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you very much.